Well, very good, very good. Can you hear me? Yes, very good afternoon. Well, I see some very good and old friends here present. Welcome to the IMET, to the European Institute of the Mediterranean, and to today's conference that we have entitled "Syria's Morning After: Who Owns the Revolution?" That, as you know, is organized as a public lecture of the Barcelona Summer School of the Mediterranean and the Middle East that is taking place this week in Barcelona, and I assume that some of you are attending. It is both an honor and a privilege to open this timely and urgent conversation. We gather not simply to revisit the history of Syria's uprising, but to interrogate its present meaning and transition that is taking place nowadays, its legacy, its ownership, and its unresolved future. The Syrian revolution, which erupted in 2011 as a grassroots call for dignity, freedom, and justice, has since then been eclipsed by the brutality of war, turmoil, and disarray, the endurance of authoritarianism, and the impact of foreign powers' influence in the country. And yet, almost 15 years after the uprising in 2011, the question remains: who owns the revolution today? Who speaks for its ideals? Who carries its memories? And what remains of the transformative potential that the revolution entailed in the beginning, both in Syria and across the region? These are not easy questions, but they are essential. They invite us to move beyond simplistic binaries, and they force us to confront the fragmented political, social, and ethnical landscape that Syria now occupies. To help us guide through these difficult terrains, we are especially privileged to welcome Professor Fawaz A, whose work over the past 3 decades has profoundly shaped our understanding of Middle Eastern politics. Professor Gerges, as you all probably know, is a leading scholar of international relations and Middle Eastern affairs at the London School of Economics. His research has spanned political Islam, jihadist movements, US foreign policy in the region, and crucially, the dynamics of Arab revolutions. And this conversation, that will also feature a discussant, Yazid Saik, is not just about Syria. It is about how we understand revolution legitimacy, memory, and justice in the 21st century. And it speaks to a broader questions for Europe and the Mediterranean region about responsibility, engagement, and solidarity in the face of unresolved conflict and transition. So thank you for joining us today, and you will allow me now to take a comfortable seat with you, and my good friend Umut, Dr. Umut, will replace me to conduct these sessions. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We're all friends. We all know each other. Okay, Roger did some of my job anyway, so and I don't want to lose more time because we started a little bit late. Roger reminded me that there are new rules at EMET, which means that the building will close at 8 o'clock, strict, sharp. So the format will be Fawaz will give his first presentation, about 30 minutes, about Syria, and then Yazid will discuss his paper or whatever he would like to discuss. And then we'll try to, unlike on Monday, we'll try to have plenty of time, at least half of the session, for the audience. I just happen to, I'm a lucky owner of Fawaz's latest book, The Great Betrayal, which has been out, what, a month ago? A month ago only. by Princeton University Press. I would strongly recommend it to everybody. And Yazid's readings, well, actually one of them that I would mention, you can find his writings in Carnegie Endowment for International Peace website often, regularly. But I would also like to highly recommend an interview he gave to Isaac Chotiner, I think about a year ago in the New Yorker, about Gaza and the Palestinian self-determination. Without further ado, Fawaz.
Thank you. Thank you very much for organizing this event, and thank you for showing up. At the end of the day, I can imagine it's been a long day for you, so really it's a privilege to have you here. The topic is really usually is this? Can you hear me?
Now it's perfect.
Usually, you never start a talk by making a qualification. But I will make a qualification because I think it's a very important conceptual qualification. I think we're talking about Syria, as you know, and this is a moving target. It is. It's a moving target because are we?
Still technical difficulties.
I think there must be a conspiracy.
We get overtime.
I don't need a microphone anyway. I shout very. Are we fine?
Disconnect the other ones?
Shall we disconnect the?
Okay. And now I think it's working.
So we get over penalty time. After 8.
Okay.
The reason why this qualification is very important because we are talking about a moving target. The dust has not settled on the battlefields of Syria. Anything could happen. Anything. Tomorrow, we could wake up tomorrow and see Ahmed al-Shara dead, literally. We could wake up tomorrow and see, Syria plunging into ethnic, religious, political conflict. All I'm suggesting is that we have to take everything we say, we have to say it in the spirit of humility and the spirit that we really don't know where Syria is heading and where Syria will be in the next year or so. But I think looking at the Arab world in particular and the Middle East in general in the past 50 or 60 years, I think many of us, and I'm sure Yazid share my views, we have been disheartened, terribly disheartened and disappointed by the lack of any political transition in the Middle East. In fact, I would say since 1945. The first generation of newly decolonized states, whether you're talking about Muhammad Mossadegh in Iran or Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt or the first early Syrian nationalists, I think they had high hopes and great aspirations that somehow they could build organic states. They could really reclaim their history. They can become fully sovereign states. That from 1953 up to 1979, Iran was ruled by a very bloody and very oppressive. Iran was ruled by a very bloody and very oppressive monarchy. And I think it's fair to say that Iran is really monarchy. And I think it's fair to say that Iran there is really hardly any change. In fact, the clerics are as oppressive and as repressive as the Shah of Iran. Think of the Arab Spring uprisings between 2010 and 2012. I myself, I've written 2 books on. I was swept by the aspirational type, by the hopes and the dreams of, dignity, freedom, justice. Think what happened in Egypt in 2013, Yemen, Libya. I mean, even Tunisia, our most important case study, where it used to be the most progressive, relatively. I think Syria, Tunisia has descended now into a repression. Tunisia has descended now into a repression, and political really transition has failed to materialize in Tunisia. And on I can talk about where is Syria today. I think from a personal point of view, just for you, some students, is that I think we think that somehow when autocrats and dictators and somehow fall, automatically you're going to have political transition. That the fall of the Shah of Iran or the fall of Hosni Mubarak or the fall of Bashar al-Assad will automatically lead to a kind of political transition. I think questions we need to ask ourselves, are there any institutions? Is there middle class? Is there any institutionalized opposition? Is there any kind of infrastructure? How does change happen? How does political change happen in such an environment? Even though I don't know, and I don't think anyone knows what happens in Syria in the next year or two, I think my overarching hypothesis is that there is no political transition in Syria. There is nothing called political transition. No institutions being set up. The nationalist opposition has never been integrated into the government. There are no major social classes that are being integrated into the revolution. If you ask me who owns the revolution, I think in a very simplistic way, it's Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and Ahmed al-Shara own the revolution. I think, again, let me simplify further, and I hope Yazid, basically has a different view. I think it's a one-man show. It's Ahmed al-Shara show. Ahmed al-Shara, since December 24, has basically transported his Idlib authority into Damascus. Literally, Ahmed al-Shara has a total monopoly on every single institutional and power center in Syria. There is not even, the nationalist opposition and the Islamist opposition that led the revolt against Assad, not even a single oppositional member has been basically included in any kind of ministry or any kind of center of power. He has appointed all his protege, and man now control all, remember, all. There is not, I'm saying almost or most. Every single ministry, every single institution, every single key department is controlled by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham and Ahmed al-Shara and their affiliates. The Ministry of Justice, the Ministry of Interior, the Ministry of Defense, the commanders of the armies, the mayors, the governors. It's to look at, Bashar al-Assad and Ahmed al-Shara. Ahmed al-Shara has more power, he's concentrated more power in his hand than Bashar al-Assad. And yet, we'll talk about what does it really mean for Syria. Every commander of the army, every commander of the intelligence, of the security forces has been appointed by al-Shara, and they're all his protege. Literally, they were with him in his journey from 2012 in Syria when he was sent to Syria by Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi. He was the representative of the Islamic State in Syria. And of course, he, as you well know, he shifted from the Islamic State to Al-Qaeda, and then he's been growing and maturing, and surely I think Ahmed Shara is not the same as Abu Muhammad al-Julani. There has been, I think, a major transformation in his political views, and I'll come back to that. But in terms of the political transition involving the population, involves constitutional mandate, involves reconciliation, involves engagement, involves inclusion. Nada. Zero. In fact, the poor nationalists who led the revolt against Bashar al-Assad bemoan the fact that they cannot even contact Ahmad al-Shara. They have no place in the system that's being really set up in Syria. So in terms of political transition, there is no political transition. We can talk about what's being set up in Syria and what are the major features and what are the major ideological worldview and what kind of Syria will most likely emerge if Ahmad al-Shah survives, if this particular administration survives, because I don't know. I mean, it's a very shaky foundation. We know that the Iranian revolution, when it was hijacked by the Islamists, it was a social class, the social classes that basically captured power. It was a coalition between the bazaars and the religious establishment, right? And this, it's a very simple, theoretical premise. A social class captured power, and they have been in power, some minor changes since 1980. In Syria, there is no social class. It's Hayat Tahrir Sham, an ideologically an Islamic, a Salafi, jihadist ideological movement that is now more of a Sunni Salafi Islamist movement. It's no longer really a Salafi jihadist. I mean, Ahmad al-Shara and Hayat Tahrir Sham have been able to shed their skin, even though Ahmad al-Shara still subscribed to Salafi Islamism, Sunni Islamism. This is his worldview. This is his habitat. This is his world. It's Salafi Sunni jihadism. And what he's really trying to do, and comparisons are very misleading, I think he's trying to create a kind of a vilayat al-faqih ala Sunni Islam. Vilayat al-faqih, the clericship, the rulership of the clergy in Iran. It's a Sunni thing with minor differences because Sunni Islam, Salafi Sunni Islam is different. Just a few points about a few weeks after the Minister of Justice was appointed. I'll just give you some example about what being said. And the Minister of Justice, in an interview, he said, "Look, why are you asking me about the type of regime? 90% of Syrians are Muslims, and 90% of Muslims that they really want a Sharia." And he meant it. That to him, not 90% Syrians, of course, it's an exaggerated number, right? He included the Alawites and the Druze and the Sunnis. I think you're 75% Yazid?
Sunnis?
70%?
I guess if you take the total.
But the big point about 90%, let's say 90% are Muslims. To him, the 90% of Muslims, they will vote like a herd. And elections are a means to an end, to establish, to really have a Sharia as the highest law of the land. That's a very important, and this is not the only statement. I think I want to build up on this particular to see what kind of type of regime. The Ministry of Education, the reforms that we've seen by the ministers who are appointed by Ahmad al-Shara, trying to really privilege Islamist, Salafi, Sunni, Islamist over nationalist. In terms of the educational reforms that have been carried out in Syria. The Defense Ministry now, every single recruit has to go through a kind of recruitment, a Sharia recruitment, months or so, 20 days, because they want all the recruits in the Defense Ministry to basically be socialized into defending our religion and our nation, because it's the idea, the overarching idea, the identity is religion as opposed to a nation, nationalist. And I think that we're seeing throughout the institutions privileging this kind of, and that's fine, that's not the question, but these kind of changes tell us exactly about the kind of a ideological institutional framework that's really being set up in Syria. And I think Ahmad Shara said it more than once. He said, well, look, the spoils belongs to the victors. We won. That's exactly what he said. We won, and I want a government that basically reflects our values and our identity. And what he means by that reflects it's not Islamic, it's a Sunni Salafi identity. Please, I'm not talking about Islam as a religion. I'm talking about a Salafi Sunni identity based on his interpretation of the faith, as opposed to basically the mainstream of the religious community or what have you. And we can talk about what it means. And I think since December 2024, if everything that he has done, Ahmed Shara, and I'm really focusing on because it's a one-man show, because literally, I mean, he appointed himself as a president for 5 years. The transition, because the nationalist opposition wanted transition to last for, 1 year and a half. He said, no, at least 5 years. So the transition in Syria is 5 years. He is a president. If he survives the 5 years, I doubt it very much he will ever leave the office. I think this is president for life, knowing what we know about Arab politics and these kind of characters. I think he really believes in revolutionary legitimacy, that he does not need Syrians, any kind of conferring on Ahmed Shara legitimacy. And I think in addition to revolutionary legitimacy, everything that he has done since December 24 is to really try to gain regional and international recognition and to help lift the sanctions on Syria. And I think he has been brilliantly successful. I mean, it's unbelievable what he has been able to do. I mean, I had never imagined that even the Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Jordan, they fully embrace Ahmed Shara. And even President Trump now sings the praise of Ahmed Shara, a charismatic, wonderful man. Yesterday he said, this is a good man. He still has, by the way, he still have $10 million on his head. But but Trump is a wonderful man, good man. And he has promised to really normalize relations with Israel too. That's what really but we'll come back to that. I think this is really where Syria is today. I think Ahmed Shara is not really very much worried about somehow the views of Syrian people, because I think he knows very well. He lifts the sanctions are lifted, the Syrian economy basically takes off, and then bread and butter, and the Syrians are, quite great entrepreneurs, and somehow he will be able to manufacture consent. But ultimately, in 5 years, again, he will be able to be re-elected as president for another 5 years. What kind of, again, I'm speculating, I hope you know that. What kind of regime type? What's being set in Syria? I want to just put some ideas on the table and see whether we can really make sense. Even though there is so much that we don't know, and it's really a moving target. I think the first point I want to make 6 points. The first point is that the source of political authority in Syria and the Shara is a Sharia, make no doubts about it. If there is one thing that is, I and many others, is that a Sharia is basically not the political will of the people. That is the political will, they will vote for a Sharia. And everything that he and his man believe that a Sharia, and particularly his worldview himself, even when he was in Idlib, he is obsessed with the idea of establishing a Sunni Salafi entity. It's deep. Even though he has shed his Salafi jihadist skin, he no longer really belongs to Al-Qaeda or ISIS. I mean, he's a pragmatist. He has been able to show really amazing. What a brilliant operator. It really is unbelievable. I mean, think about it. Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi sent him to Syria. And then when Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi wanted him to swear allegiance to him, he basically swore allegiance to Ayman al-Zawahiri. Both Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and Ayman al-Zawahiri are gone. Ahmed al-Shara stay with us, and even Bashar al-Assad. He outlasted Bashar al-Assad. That's really something to, I mean, it's amazing that, his political instincts. So a Sharia will most likely be the legitimate political organization of the new Syria. The second point, and I'm simplifying, I'm running, is that, great. Plenty of time, thanks.
Thank you.
I think if you ask me about what's happening, knowing that there are so many unknown variables, I would say what's happening in Syria is a distinctive cocktail of conservative Sunni Salafism with pre-Ba'ath Sunni nationalism, with bureaucratic functionalism. That, he knows very well that he has to establish an effective bureaucratic model. And open markets, very similar to Turkey and the Gulf state. I think everything we know about the new regime is that they really believe in privatization, opening the market of Syria. They're already getting rid of many of the socialist and many of the bureaucratic, constraints that they basically were part of the Syrian regime in the past 50 years. I think, and in this particular sense, I think what's happening, the relations between Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Qatar, the Emirates and Jordan, and the Emirates to a large extent, he looks at both to Turkey and Saudi Arabia as the model of governance and the model of free business. And in many ways, why should we begrudge Ahmed al-Shara to apply Salafi Sunni Islam? Saudi Arabia is governed by Salafi Sunni Islam, so is Qatar and other states. So I hope you don't get from my point of view that this is, I'm making, again, a normative statement. I'm saying this is his worldview. And I think the reason why he has been embraced by his neighbors, by Syria's neighbors, I think because, first of all, I think they are delighted that a Sunni regime, anti-Iranian, anti-Hezbollah now, has succeeded is in Damascus. Ahmed Shara, when he was asked about Israel and what kind of relations will Syria have with Israel, he said, well, Israel and us, we have common enemies, quote unquote. And the common enemies, basically Iran and Hezbollah. There is one thing to really appreciate, and I follow these characters for many years. They really are obsessed with Shiite Islam. They're genocidal, Shiite genocidal characters. It's unbelievable. This is because I'm not trained in Islamic law. I have not really been able to understand, their visceral hatred of Shiite Islam. If you ask me, for Ahmed al-Shara, the choice, if he's really asked to choose between Israel and Iran, and most probably, I think now what we hear is that the Americans are really pushing very hard for a kind of other security agreement between Syria and Israel, or even normalization. In fact, Trump has stopped talking about Saudi Arabia, now he's talking more and more about Syria. Third point, what's happening in Syria now is an authoritarian light regime. I think, regardless of what you think of Ahmed Shara, I think Syria now is a better place, an easier place, a softer place. Even though massacres have taken place on large scale against the Alawites and against, and we have evidence now by human rights organizations and others that I think the responsibility goes to the top, the defense ministry, all, and these are open sources information. I think the reason why what we do not know, the reason why I'm skeptical about what we know about Syria, Ahmed al-Shara has been able to de-radicalize Hayat Tahrir Sham from top down. Yet, what we do not really know what's happening from the bottom up. And everything that I read, secondary sources, is that really this is an entirely different universe. They have never shed their basically extremist views in terms of the Salafi jihadist views. And I think in many ways, the way we understand the massacres, the many massacres, almost more than 2,000 people have been killed. And literally every week we have reports about kidnapping young Alawite women, killing Alawites, in particular Alawites, seen as the heritage of Bashar al-Assad. So it's an authoritarian light based on a conservative Salafi Sunni interpretation of Islam and majoritarian rule. That is, even if there's election, so what? We are the majority. We're either 90% or 80%, and it's point. Please, when we talk about political transition, democracy is not even uttered. This is, forget about democracy for Ahmad al-Shara. It's un-Islamic. Even Islamic democracy, which Muslim brothers and mainstream Islamists talk about, to him, Islamic democracy is un-Islamic. It's out of the question. It's not even discussed or considered. He and his protege never utter the word. Whenever they're asked, we have our own model, and what they mean by that is, that's. And what he means by that is that instead they keep saying, no, it's not about democracy. We're going to build institutions, set up institutions. But what they mean by that is that the institutions could be Islamicized and made, to fit their own beliefs, the Salafi, the Sunni Salafi jihadist. Point 4, why does it matter? I think it matters because there is a major divide, conceptual divide between Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, sectarian identity, and the inclusive identity, the relatively inclusive identities of the nationalist and professionalist and the Sunnis, mainstream Sunni groups that led the revolt against Assad. Please don't believe in the notion that all Sunnis think like Ahmad al-Shara. The Sunni community in Syria has always been forward-looking and inclusive. In fact, they run the state under Bashar al-Assad, the economy and the state itself. And I think if I were to speculate, and because of a bit of knowledge, I think even a critical segment of Sunnis believe in the notion of citizenship as opposed to establish a Salafi Sunni entity similar to that of Saudi Arabia. I'm not suggesting that they oppose Ahmad Shara, but I think citizenship is really basically would be their preference as opposed to really a kind of Islamic doctrine. So in this particular sense, I think the reason why